Well, hello, everyone. Welcome to Frame.io Live. My name is Shawn McDaniel, and I'm a content producer for Frame.io, and we're so excited to have you all join us. We have a great session today, but before I kind of get into all that, I'd love to get started with getting some shout outs from the group, from the audience. We've got some people kind of trickling in. So I love to kind of ask where everyone's coming in from. I'm chiming in from Hollywood, California. So I'd love to know where everyone else is coming in because sometimes we get some far off places. And I'm really impressed at some of the far destinations that we get on this channel. And I know it's very early for some of us as well on the West Coast. So if you are joining us on the West Coast, please throw that in the chat. And also, what do you want to learn? What questions do you have for Atomos? This is a live session, so we are going to take some Q&A at the end, but there's certain things you want to go over or talk about. We may be able to bring it up in this session, but also we can use that to gear us for future sessions and find out what more things that you want to hear and learn about, so that we create content that's tailored more for you. But I see some notes coming in, and we got some people chiming in. We got some LA in there. We got some Manchester. Holy cow. We've got Austin, Texas. We've got a yo in there. All right. Slight audio delay. I'm very sorry. I'm working on trying to fix that. But yes, I am hit, but everyone else is in sync. But I appreciate that feedback. We got Birmingham, Alabama. We got Atlanta, Georgia. We've got Cincinnati. Holy cow. We got the moon. I had no idea the moon could do this. This is probably the funniest response I've got. So that's great. I love it. The moon is awesome. New Orleans, one of my favorites. We've also got Madrid, watching from Denmark. Wow, there's a lot of folks there. Paris, France. This is wonderful. Keep those comments coming in. Again, let us know what you want to learn and talk about. But man, I'm really excited to be here, and I can't wait to bring out our guests and panelists. So I don't want to waste too much time, but I do want to go over a few things. So it's been a year since we got this group last together, and if you weren't familiar with the session that was done last year by Atomos, we could throw that in the chat so you can watch that session as well, because this is all about kind of looking back and then also looking ahead. So we got this group together about a year ago. And we've got some new faces as well. And we're going to talk about cloud workflows, and more specifically, Atomos cloud workflows. So since launch, Atomos has opened the doors for hundreds of cameras to be able to connect to Frame.io using our camera to cloud system. And Atomos already makes great monitors with an endless amount of tools to ensure you have accurate picture, high quality recording, and a proxy upload to Frame.io itself. Now, I've been a huge fan of Atomos. I remember going to the NAB shows a few years ago, and I remember there was crowds of people all over the booth, and everyone was shouting, Atomos, Atomos, Atomos. And they would always give away a device, and my eyes have always been set on the Atomos Sumo. I think that is an incredible product. And once I started working for Frame, and we became, had a little bit of a relationship, and now it's spawned off into this camera to cloud relationship. It's just been a really, really great journey. But yes, we are joined by Paul Scurrell from Atomos, and I'm going to bring him out here in just a moment. But since we are going live, we are live to YouTube and Facebook, as well as LinkedIn. I do want to go over a little bit of some, kind of Frame.io fundamentals. So I want to go ahead and pull up my slides here. I want to show you really quickly about what Frame.io is. Now, again, this is our topic, Atomos Camera to Cloud, looking back and ahead. And these are all of our panelists. We've got Paul Scurrell, we've got Dru Williams, we got Sheldon, we got Victor Laforteza. Please tell me if I'm saying that right, Victor. I'm so sorry. But yeah, what is Frame.io? That is the big question that I want to answer for some folks in the audience here. Well, basically, Frame.io is having all of your assets in one place. It's a creative collaboration tool where you can bring in all of your media, all of your project files, all of the content that's needed to make your production into one centralized location. And from there, you're able to bring in your creative teams. They can go in, they can comment on assets and messages. They can leave comments and annotations, but they can also work with the media that's in that account in one centralized location, instead of having everything kind of spread out to all kinds of different applications. If you're using, other file management tools or using other ways to view and look at files, a lot of times people use YouTube and Vimeo, and they do private links, and all that can get really, really confusing. So having that all in Frame.io makes that so much easier. Now, Frame.io is a mobile tool, so we've got obviously our web app, which is available for any computer that has a web browser, but we also have an iOS app that allows you to interact with your assets on both an iPhone and iPad. And of course, for enterprise users, we've got the Apple TV app, so to allow you to view your assets directly inside of your Apple TV. We've also got integrations with Premiere Pro, After Effects, as well as Final Cut Pro 10 and DaVinci Resolve. So if you want to bring your assets directly into your NLE, those NLEs at least, you'll be able to do that directly inside of those. Otherwise, you'll have to just download those separately and drop those into your NLE system. But we are talking primarily about Camera to Cloud, and I want to show you a couple things that's kind of universal when it comes to our workflows. And this is kind of a universal workflow backbone. So these are all steps in the workflow process that we're all very familiar with. You have to capture your camera video or stills, as well as your audio, but then you have to transfer those. Sometimes you have to ship those drives out. Then you have to process that to either back it up on other drives. You have to create transcodes as well. Then it gets to your editorial team. But with Camera to Cloud, we're solving that problem by capturing the video, audio, and your pictures, skipping that whole process and sending it directly to editorial. And that's primarily what we're going to talk about today. So once again, we are joined by Paul Scurrell from Atomos, who's going to tell us how things have changed over the last year. And I'm going to bring on Graham, Victor, and Dru to talk a little bit about their experience with Camera to Cloud. So Paul, I'm going to bring you out and say hello to our audience. Hello, Paul.
Hi, Shawn. Hi, everyone.
So Paul, it's so good to see you. And this is our second webinar together. And I'm so happy that we can continue this conversation and go over more about Atomos. Now, again, if you didn't watch that session, that link's going to be in the chat. It's a great video, great breakdown and everything. But but let's talk a little bit. So can you tell the audience a little bit about yourself and what you do for Atomos, Paul?
Yeah, sure. Hi, I'm Paul Scurrell, and it's a privilege to be heading up the product team here at Atomos. So in these exciting times, before Atomos, I ran a company called Timecode Systems, whose tech is now part of Atomos, and it's the wireless air glue sync component of the products. Before that, right at the beginning, I was a sound supervisor, sound mixer in all sorts of TV genres, and got involved in shooting and also in post-production. That was originally for 10, 15 years as BBC staff, and then freelance for another sort of 10 or 15 years after all that. So I guess probably short at this point, you probably should say to me, you don't really look old enough for that.
Paul, you definitely don't look old enough for that. Not at all. So it's been a year. So what's the perception been, and how are your Atomos users responding to this drastic shift in workflow?
Wow, well, I mean, what a year it's been, eh? When we originally launched the Atomos Connect module for the Ninja 5 and the 5 Plus, the Shogun Connect and the Zato Connect with integration into Frame.io Camera to Cloud, we knew we were onto something massive, and we knew it was going to genuinely change how people work in the future. But what we didn't anticipate was actually how quickly people would embrace it and trial it and see how it would benefit them. And the scale of the take-up with people signing up on our gateway Atomos Cloud Studio and then pairing their devices to Frame.io has knocked us out, to be honest with you. We're super pleased that the stats show a massive growth rate with more users, the same users coming back time and time again, with more devices and uploading more content. So, that's been super rewarding. And it's also really rewarding to see how many people already know about Camera to Cloud now compared to a year ago, which clearly shows that it's sort of fast becoming a standard and accepted workflow.
That's incredible. So with all that, what are most use cases you've seen with this workflow in the field? Have there been any major breakthroughs from customers that have learned from this, or that you have learned from this?
Well, I guess this is another area where things have sort of pleasantly surprised us, I think, over the last year. I mean, we've learned so much this year with the feedback and how people are using the kit. We're seeing a huge increase in using it across the different genres that are clearly benefiting from Camera to Cloud. I guess originally we thought and expected that would be a huge uptake in scripted workflows, but that's not just the case. I think, I would hope that one reason maybe why things have turned out slightly different is that Atomos, we've sort of got a fantastic range of products that sort of fit different budgets and camera types, like SDI cameras and HDMI cameras. But anyway, we're seeing a massive growth in unscripted use cases, whether it's live events, documentaries, corporate launches. So, that's been sort of all the different use cases that we maybe didn't expect. And also we're finding a lot of customers are not really that interested in relinking to what would be a traditional sort of proxy workflow. They simply want to get a high quality H.265 file to the cloud to be reviewed, edited, and then shared super quick.
So to kind of, obviously we have people that are buying into it and they've got, their use cases specifically, to make this product work. But what do you tell customers that are hesitant or resistant? I love to ask this question because there are people that, maybe are still kind of getting their feet in the water, still trying to feel out, the entire groundwork of it. But what do you tell customers that are hesitant or resistant to using camera to cloud?
Well, I guess it probably sounds like a bit of an obvious answer, really. But what we tend to do is really just reassure people that they can carry on shooting as normal, with all the media getting recorded locally as before. So nothing changes really. And then we remind them that there's a separate version that gets sent to the cloud, so they have even more backup. And that's on top of the obvious, workflow benefits for camera to cloud that obviously the other guys here and today we're going to be articulating in a short while. And I guess I always tend to remind them that, you don't always need fast internet. You don't have to worry about patchy internet because all the clips that you're recording are just getting stacked up, and they just upload as and when. Nothing is ever lost. You just basically keep shooting as normal.
Well, thank you so much for your insight, Paul. I want to bring you out a little bit later because you have some stuff that you want to talk about. So we'll save that towards the end of our discussion. But I want to shift a little bit and hear from some of our panelists. We'll see in just a minute, Paul. I want to hear from some of our panelists and get an idea of what their experience has been like using camera to cloud. So I'm going to bring out Graham, Victor, and Dru, but I'm going to start really quickly with Dru, since Dru has been here from the beginning. He was at our first session that was put on. So I'm going to bring you out here, Dru. How are you, sir? I hear you are exhausted from a shoot that you just wrapped up. So can you tell us a little bit about that shoot that went on?
Yeah, well, luckily we were using camera to cloud because I'd probably still be there at this point. All jokes aside, yeah, we wrapped really early in the morning and now I'm here. So I think we wrapped at like 4 or 5. It feels like that at least. And no, it's been great. So just wrapped up production. That's always a good feeling.
Definitely is a great feeling. And thank you for hopping on. I know you've had a long late night, but I want to hear about your workflow. And I think the audience does as well. I think workflows are vitally important. I think there's so many little nuggets that you can grab from hearing about others' workflows. So I want to hear about yours, specifically with the Atomos device using camera to cloud, perhaps what changed in this workflow within the year. And, the big question is, do you operate the same way now as you did then?
Yeah, I mean, when we first started, it felt like everything was kind of in beta because like you said, I mean, it was early. That was one of the early adapters for that. And it was finding the right place at the right time. At first, my thought was like, oh, internet, not everywhere has internet. We shoot in the field a lot. That's obviously not an issue. As Paul just said, we're not worried about patching and it just, they load up as they go. So I've found out and I've learned the process because it's such a new process for everyone. It's one of those things where if you are not using it all the time, then it's probably I would just say you should probably learn to use it all the time. But it was a little bit of a learning curve when we first started, and now it's a very streamlined process. And those learning curves aren't hard challenges. They're just, you get set in your ways and you do something for so long, then you just adapt, something new. And to answer your question, long story short, we're functioning the same way we always have, except our workflow is much more efficient.
Now, how has it been adopting this with other creative heads, maybe even on the tech side?
Yeah, I mean, our editors love it. It's one of those things where DIT loves it. We're we're not taking jobs, but we're simplifying and making them more efficient. Our editor is, I mean, he is ecstatic. The fact that he's getting previews an hour before I can bring him a card to the editing bay. And we, going back to this example that we were just discussing about this show or the movie we just wrapped, we had our editor on set live. So, and we were in this cabin, completely secluded, but we did have internet. So literally as I'm shooting, they're uploading to him. So he's getting previews. He's seen, he already knows what is expected when he gets the card. So he's already efficiently able to start that process, start the editing process, align clips and do those things. And then once I jump back in and give him that card, they just automatic relink process. And I can tell that it's relieved a lot of stress on both the DIT and his end, because a lot of times, you're waiting for footage. I mean, you get to a point on day 9 where he's probably still cutting things from the day before, but you're to the point where he's catching up essentially, and it's speeding up his workflow. So if we can, there's all these steps in the production process, and if we can speed up that third part of the workflow, I think, of pre-production, production, and post, we're already getting a head start into post. That's like life. That's the best thing that can happen right there. That's as good as it gets. And he's ecstatic too. And again, no one is late to their jobs. And I think the key word comes down to efficiency.
So I have kind of a side question. You brought up your DIT, and a lot of questions I hear from folks out in the field or on a shoot, and this may be more for scripted, but I'm curious though, do you lean on the DIT to make those connections to camera to cloud, to set up the project and, kind of link that 6-digit code together? Who do you rely on set to kind of make that connection?
Yeah, I mean, it kind of varies, right? It varies on the production, and it varies on exactly what you're doing. So I would say when we first started, I was always the one to make sure. I felt like it was kind of like my baby, and I was introducing everyone to it. And like, it wasn't like salesy, but it was like, here's what we're gonna do, and everyone's like, all right, this sounds more complicated than it used to be. And of course it wasn't. But when we first started, that was mostly me, and I felt like I needed to be able to have control of that. But now DIT does it. I mean, I think Graham will probably talk on this a lot more, because he mentioned it the other day in our meeting. But it kind of comes down to like, is it DIT now doing C2C, or do we have a dedicated C2C person? Like, is that a new job and position that we can open up, to help bring that person in? Then they can just concentrate on that.
Yeah, I was always curious on that, because a lot of folks have that, that worry and that question. And it sounds like you had to kind of spearhead that forward, prove that it kind of worked, and then everybody just kind of follows suit after that. So thank you for sharing that. But I want to talk now about kind of the client side. How do you loop in your client? And also, do you give them, I mean, this isn't normal for you to give like, dailies or assets, but, with this access to on-set, immediate shots that are taken, how do you loop in your client, and do you give them access to your dailies and assets?
Yeah, I mean, it's client dependent, right? We all have those clients that are very strict, and sometimes you don't want to show them what a raw clip looks like, because they'll just tell you how ugly it is. But so there's like the selective clients that, and there's ones that you're like, guys, check this out. Here's the link. Like, you'll see everything as we upload. So I've been in both situations. So I think that is client based. But to build off of that, when I have done that, it's just like a communication connect that has never existed within production, right? Because they're getting all of this right in front of them. They're seeing it firsthand. They know there's nothing going on. I mean, you put antennas on your monitor, you look like a pro. I mean, it's a matte box and antennas on the monitor, and you were just the most, you are so cinematic now. No, it's, I say that jokes aside, but I mean, when you have that, there's no selling, right? It's not like I have to sit there and I don't really explain to my client the full process. I just say, hey guys, here's a link. We're going to get you guys stuff up as soon as possible. If your editor wants to see it, if you're, if they're remote somewhere else, if there's only one client that flew in, they have access to it, and they can share that with the team back at home base. And it just makes everything that much more easier and efficient. Again, the term always comes back to that. It's a simplifier. It really is. And you're eliminating the need for shipments, and you're eliminating the need for waiting to see these. If dailies it wasn't possible to see dailies like ever if you were remote. You had to be on set. And now that's
I mean, you might want to change it to minutelies instead of dailies, because I mean, you're getting those in a matter of seconds. Yep. Well, Dru, thank you for sharing. I'm gonna put you on the sidelines. We're gonna bring y'all back here in just a moment. But Graham, I want to bring you out here. Well, let me figure out where my mouse is. Let me get you out here, Graham. Say hello, Graham.
Say hello, Shawn. Hey, everybody. Hello, moon person. Thanks for joining.
Yeah, that's a long ways away, the moon. I'm surprised they have good service out there. Anyway, thank you so much for coming. I want to make sure I get enough time to talk with you all individually before we kind of bring it out to the group. But give me a little bit of your background. Tell us a little bit about yourself. And then I want to talk about your workflow as well. I want to break that down a little bit.
Yeah, thanks, Shawn. So, I mean, in many ways, I've been lucky enough to have kind of Atomos as a brand grow with me throughout my career, if that makes sense. So I was a person running around with the DSLR, and I looked at Atomos as kind of unlocking the potential of my DSLR early on. And then, 7 or 8 movies later, having worked with most of the major networks, having worked with commercials, having won an Emmy, having filmed everywhere from Chernobyl to RuPaul spinoffs to Istanbul, Australia, and beyond. Now Atomos is kind of bringing me to the next chapter in my career. And of course, Frame has been there really every step of the way. So I guess I'm just fanboying out a little bit to be here. But, I'm not the first person to adopt new technology. The shift for me from like fluorescent and tungsten lighting to LED lighting, for example, took forever. But I'm here because I need to future-proof myself. And I believe camera to cloud is the future. It's where our industry is heading, and I can be a part of that or not. And I want to be part of it. So that's why I'm here.
So you work on a ton of different projects. You have kind of a mix of narrative and documentary. How do those segments differ for you with this particular system?
Yeah, I think of it as I'm kind of stealing best practices, so to speak, from any particular genre that I'm working on. So I should say this is a documentary just honestly about me using camera to cloud in the Hawaiian Islands. You see this playing in the background right now. So this is a Scurrell backpack, and I'm checking my internet connection. And then there's my camera to cloud Ninja 5 Atomos rig with the Connect on the back right there. So this is like the smallest kind of documentary configuration that I think you can possibly have. You sort of have internet on your back right there. You have a tiny camera right there, and then all the clips are populating into Frame. So, I'm taking best practices from working in the field like this, and I'm bringing this on to scripted movies, and I don't look at them as individual genres. I'm just looking for the best thing to be using. And I just have looked at my entire career that way. So my workflow in camera to cloud started with like me dipping the tiniest little toes into the ocean. On the way to this last NAB, I took basically the same setup that you see here to Death Valley. I was like, all right, well, if I can upload some clips here to Frame, then this has potential. And I was really bummed out because no one was around to see me kind of jump up and down, Shawn, when my clips populated in Frame. It was the coolest thing. I was in the middle of nowhere. I was using, I think maybe a T-Mobile hotspot at the time. And I've been steadily using this workflow and adding it to, say, my most recent work with Nickelodeon. I've been kind of getting buy-in from one team member at a time and slowly expanding the group of people who love camera to cloud as much as I do.
Now, when you're working on something that's maybe more scripted or something where you have kind of a larger crew, do you allow access to at least your top creative heads on set to work within the Frame.io app, or maybe even just on the browser to actually see those clips come in live? Do you allow that access to them to do that?
Yeah, Shawn, that is a great question, and it's something that we all need to be hyper focused on, because Dru alluded to this, but it's you send somebody a raw file that's or a log file or what have you, and depending on who that person is, they will think something is broken. So it's a political question. It's an on-set dynamics question as much as anything else. I believe in sort of siloing different departments on sort of a need-to-know basis. I believe in sort of the sacred space that is Video Village and separating out the different department heads from sort of core Video Village. And for me, Camera to Cloud is an extension of that. But it's also about multi-project collaboration, which of course Frame has sort of always been known for. But as a producer, as a director of photography, often I have many projects at the same time, perhaps as many as half a dozen in various stages of development all over the planet. And I'm able to, because I'm okay with seeing all of those clips with the included metadata, not everyone is, I'm able to give feedback in near real time as these projects are unfolding, globally, or even a second unit might be shooting cutaways for a main sequence that I'm filming right now. And I want to have a take on that because our stuff has to cut together.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a question of siloing people, putting them on a need to know basis, break down the walls where possible. But I think we've all learned that not all clients, not all stakeholders are the same.
Yeah.
In that regard, at least.
Well, a big question comes up for internet and kind of infrastructure, and Dru kind of talked about this a little bit, but who handles data on set for you, and who kind of does your Camera to Cloud setup? And more specifically, this is maybe for kind of your more on location shoots. Maybe we were not on a traditional set, but you're kind of on the go. Do you have a go-to person, or you just kind of do this yourself?
I think as with kind of technology things that I've been an early adopter on, I'm sort of getting buy-in from my my closest sort of freelance network, and that's kind of one person at a time.
Mm-hmm.
So, right now I'm the Camera to Cloud guru, I guess, in my little group, but I understand that's not a sustainable thing because of my workload. So I'm getting, one AC at a time, one DIT at a time. But I do think there's an argument for making this a specialized role on set in much the same way that, say, an Unreal Engine tech kind of popped out of nowhere, at least left video games and moved into film and television in the case of working with LED volumes. So I think if you can become the Camera to Cloud guru in this current stage right now, it's just going to make you, honestly, sort of infinitely hireable individual, and it's going to push your career further and faster, whether you have a first AC, background, or a DIT background, or even some kind of post or maybe even networking background. Yeah. But I don't think it's technically complex enough to require like a heavy networking individual, at least in terms of skill set.
So I want to close this out with, tying it back to Atomos here. What opportunities have opened up by using a specific Atomos device for Camera to Cloud? Because it kind of opens up the door to a lot of cameras, and I want to talk a little bit about that specific workflow using the Atomos device with Camera to Cloud.
Yes. Well, for example, I'm working on a project coming up that's a bit NDA, so I won't dive into it, but it requires a great deal of sort of different camera bodies for very specific reasons. Some of the reasons are around mounting cameras in tricky places, or a camera that does a specific frame rate. I try to keep things to a single brand whenever I can for color science reasons, but Atomos has always had this great, and I don't want to speak for them, but it seems like this design methodology where they're like camera agnostic, which I love, which allows me to pair, I have favorite cameras for different reasons, and allows me to pair these cameras together with a Camera to Cloud workflow in a way that, not all brands have honestly allowed. And so that's one of the things that I've really appreciated about Atomos. My favorite camera, for whatever reason, can be used in Camera to Cloud whenever I need it.
I love hearing that. And I want to ask you one last question is, when you're working on larger projects for, larger companies, you've obviously got a reel of all kinds of different clients. Do you find yourself having less pickups or reshoots?
Yeah. So, I mean, that kind of varies. So I'll take that question in two ways. So I have less reshoots in a documentary setting because various story producers, for example, that are in, other cities that I'm not filming in, are able to weigh in, allow me to do, cleaner transitions through whatever documentary project I might be working on. But when it, comes to working with brands like, say, Lucasfilm, shout out to those guys for a second, they care very much with how, for example, a Jedi is portrayed. This is a true story. And they catch these sort of they can catch the phrasing of a Jedi doesn't do this or a Jedi does this, and they can weigh in before I've locked myself in describing a particular character in a particular way. So that's a way that those are two different ways where Camera to Cloud can help me both from a client perspective and then from a pivoting in the field perspective when it comes to documentary filmmaking. So I don't do a ton of reshoots anyway, because I tend to do a lot of pre-production for that reason. But Camera to Cloud is perfect for getting quick feedback so that you're not worried about missing a story transition.
Well, thank you so much for your insight, Graham. I'm going to bring you all out in just a few moments. I want to ask kind of a group question here, but I want to bring out, I'm getting my notes here. I want to bring out Victor here in just a second, but I do want to address the crowd here. We've got a lot of action going on in our chats here. So I just want to take a quick little scan and see if there's any immediate questions. Now, if you do have questions, please throw those in because we do have a little time slot at the end to answer these. But I do see a lot of action going on. And yeah, so we've got a little thing, couple of questions queued up. Okay, I think this is good for the end. All right, cool. I just want to do a little check-in with everyone and see. Okay, let me get back here and let me pull up Victor. How are you?
Hey, Sean. Pretty good. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Of course. So let's dig into it. So you do a lot of shoots, around the world, and you're very international. So the first question I want to throw out to you is, what challenges have you overcome using C2C internationally?
I think it's mostly the logistics, like data logistics, file management, and also remote collaborations. Like we save money on airfare, and then the collaborations that we do, mostly we have an editor in Toronto and we have editors and VFX guys in Taiwan. What happens is that with C2C workflow, it kind of takes us into a different place where we are in different locations, but we seem like we're operating and we're all locally working at the same set. So it's like a very efficient way to really connect everyone all around the globe. So I'm going to double down on the efficiency where Dru was saying that it's just almost near instant with anywhere around the world too.
So what's your primary workload? I want folks to kind of know a little bit about yourself and what you shoot and work on.
Yeah, so we are still a fairly small video production company, and at the same time, I do content on YouTube for filmmaking tutorials and stuff. But in terms of the video production business, we mainly do social media campaigns for global brands. MAC Cosmetics Taiwan is one of our recurring clients, and on the side, mostly in Toronto, we do corporate and product manufacturing videos. So both are two different things in terms of video production, but it keeps us going in terms of running the business. What happens in the social media campaigns, especially in Asia, is that there's a lot of quick turnarounds. And when I say quick turnarounds, it's like the next day delivery. And that's like the C2C workflow really brings us that efficiency that we need, because we shoot, let's just say, for a beauty commercial, a vertical video, we start off shooting everything that we need on the first 4 hours a day, and then we kind of hand it off. The footage gets to the editor right away, and we get a rough copy by after lunch. We review that with the client, and we can instantly reshoot what the client doesn't like in terms of the shots that we took, and we can go easily back and forth, especially with communication with different regional creative directors as well. So Taiwan is mostly like a local market, but then we do need approval from the Asia Pacific creative director, and they're looped in as well on Frame.io, and we can just comment and even see like do a live phone call, draw on the set. So very efficient.
So, being that you work in these other countries, my biggest question is accessing data. You know, I find it difficult even just to find, if I'm traveling somewhere, just to get on my cell phone to make a phone call. So, how do you access data in other countries? What solutions have you come up with, and how does Atomos play into that?
Right. So we usually have Wi-Fi on set, but let's just say that the Wi-Fi cuts off. The data here is a lot cheaper than what we have in North America, and it's a lot faster as well because of the 5G technology. It's mostly implemented with a lot of the phones now on the phone plans here in Asia, and it's a lot cheaper as well. We try to use like smaller files to kind of transfer files like H.265. That's why I'm kind of super excited for the new Ninja 5s, because it will allow high-res H.265 files directly to the editor from the Atomos Ninja 5 with the Atomos Connect to DaVinci Resolve to our editors. So it'll have the final output. They can color, they can edit, and we can pass it along the A copy, the B copy to the client right away.
Okay, so since we're talking a little bit about posts now, are you using your own editors, or do you pass it off to another team, or maybe the client that you're working with? Like, how does that kind of post process work with all of these assets?
Right. So we have two editors right now, one in Taiwan and one in Toronto.
Mm-hmm.
And it's our workflow is pretty simple in terms of filming to post-production. The proxies get uploaded to Frame.io directly from the Ninja 5 with the Atomos Connect, and they quickly can edit it for us. In terms of the YouTube channel, we're like trying to hone in on what our actual workflow is, but it's very similar. Once I've recorded my talking head shots, my B-roll, like let's say product B-roll shots, it gets uploaded to our library on Frame.io. And then when the editor has time to kind of sift through what videos we need to edit this week, then they can do so right away. And it's very convenient because I don't need to upload and download files for the editor anymore. So once they give me the rough cut, I get the project file for the DaVinci Resolve, and I just link up the files locally and then throw in my color grade, and I'm done the YouTube video.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing. And I appreciate all your insight on this. I do want to open it up to the group and ask a couple other quick questions. I'm going to bring out Graham, and let's bring out Dru. Hello, y'all. So I want to throw this out there to the group. For someone new using this, are there any interesting tips that you could share with this system?
I guess I'll dive in. Just try it out first. As with all things, prep in advance. Prep for me, in this case, looks like checking available internet infrastructure wherever you're filming. So like I went through all the stages. I was like on couch, tried it out. Went to desert, tried it out. Added to a small set, worked okay. Added it to a medium set, worked okay. Added it to a big set, worked okay. And now I'm in the convince everyone at the network that it's okay. So baby steps with everything to get yourself a certain level of comfort.
Now, what other benefits do y'all think can stem from using a cloud-connected workflow?
I mean, I feel like it's to the point where it's such a common thing that we use that we're taking advantage of all of the benefits because it's very simplified. And Graham just touched on it, like diving in, like kind of calmly. Like for me, it was Frame.io, and Frame.io was a platform that we use to make edits. We did our comments and we did our tallies and, your time code and all of that. And then it moved into, all right, well, we already use Atomos monitors. There's no other, like, besides setting up the Wi-Fi, you're doing the exact same function that you would without C2C. If you're using a camera or if you're using an Atomos monitor. So to me, it's almost a no-brainer. So the advantages are everything. It's everything we've been talking about. It's there's no disadvantages, I think, is the real thing, because when you have all of that going so well, like I said, with DIT, you have editing on fire in the corner and they're already doing stuff. Graham touched on being in certain situations in certain locations. I mean, there's really not a place where it can't be used. And I think all three of us at this point have proved it in different scenarios. So I think there's everything that you're missing from your SD card being removed from the camera and giving it to an editor to upload, that is efficiently all gone. It's destroyed.
Yeah, I definitely don't think I could work any other way.
No.
And, of course, with Atomos, it opens up so many doors for everyone to start using this. So it's kind of a question I threw at Paul, but I want to throw it to you all. But what do you tell people that are skeptical about this system? And do you have any success stories of kind of, awakening someone's eyes to, looks like Dru, your camera is a little hot. And I think we lost Dru.
Uh-oh.
Audio might still be there. Can you hear us, Dru?
Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes. All right. No worries.
Good deal.
Everyone, welcome to the Dru podcast.
Did I mention that I wasn't using camera to cloud right now? So that's good.
That's okay. We've got a live stream. But yes. So what do you tell people that are skeptical about the system and maybe even some success stories that you've had in converting folks to using this?
Victor, I don't know if you have one, but I mean, the biggest thing is sort of cutting down on the travel for my sort of wider crew has actually been really nice, because sometimes there are either safety considerations why I don't want a crew of like 8 people, whether they're kind of a hostile contributor. I mean, it can range from hostile contributor to just they're shy and they don't love having 8 people trampling through their home for whatever reason. So being able to extend out the crew has been really, really helpful. And yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where as I get kind of buy-in from sort of one member of the team, something about, I guess, our industry culture as a whole, every day, the first day on set for me still feels like the first day at school. I wonder when that goes away. I wonder, you know what I mean? So we all get there and we're like, well, all these matte black devices, I hope they work, and that as they continue to work over and over again, as the Atomos Connect keeps killing it, then everyone gets a certain level of comfort with it. And that's the biggest thing.
So last thing I want to close out with, before we bring Paul back out here to talk a little bit more about Atomos and some new products that they have. What about environmental impact? What do you think is going to change with that as we kind of adopt this more and more?
I think I can go on this one. The first one for me is airfare, travel, transportation. We use a lot less gas. Like I don't have to fly in and out places. If we were still operating without C2C, and even if the editor is local, they don't have to drive in and out of town now. Like especially Toronto traffic is very, very harsh now. And it takes about like an hour or 2 of someone's day just to pick up the footage, and just less emissions.
Yeah, I love hearing it. We've had a few companies that have actually earned a specific corporate status because of what C2C was able to solve for them and what it could do for the environment. To kind of protect us going forward. Well, Dru, Victor, Graham, I appreciate you guys so much for hopping on here. I do want to jump over to Paul, but don't leave yet. We're going to keep you guys on here for just a minute. But I'm going to bring Paul back out here because this is looking back, but also it's looking ahead. So I want to bring Paul back here. Hello, Paul. Thanks for hanging on the sidelines for us. So let's look ahead at the next step of the C2C journey with Atomos. What do you guys got up your sleeve?
Well, I guess before we sort of talk about camera to cloud next steps version 2, I wanted to quickly mention the main feature that we've released so far that people absolutely love. The big one that gets so much positive feedback is a feature we call progressive upload. So this is a feature that's available on any Atomos Cloud Studio paid plan and allows the content to get sent to Atomos Cloud Studio in real time while shooting. And then when the user presses stop, the file gets handed over to Frame really fast. So you're not pressing stop and then waiting for the whole file to be sent from scratch. So for example, for a 1 hour file might only take a couple of minutes maximum to appear in Frame after pressing stop. So that's a very impressive feature in practice, and people, let's say, absolutely love that. So on to things all new and shiny, which is the bit I love. Firstly, I want to introduce 2 new Ninjas that we've just launched. Very exciting. We have a new Ninja and a new Ninja Ultra. So these have a fresh new look. They're built on a brand new OS platform, OS 11. And we've unlocked a whole bunch of new features as standard, giving what we always, I hope we always do at Atomos, and offer loads of new value to our customers. So I guess for some of these other features within OS 11, maybe if you check out our website, atomos.com, for more of those details. But today, I think what I wanted to sort of focus on was some of the new features and walk you through the powerful new features that you get when you combine the Ninja Ultra with our Atomos Connect module. So if we look here as well, yeah, we've got a nice picture of the two together. And then in practice, if we look at, we have a brand new shiny Ninja Ultra here in front of me. If you've got the close-up camera there, Shawn.
Oh, yep, there we go. Let me remove this for a second.
So here's one in the flesh. So this is a new Ninja Ultra.
I love the color, by the way. Love the color.
Great, you love it. Yeah. It's yeah, very sparkling. So it's yeah, nice fresh look. And then we can see really then, just to remind ourselves, I know we saw a bit earlier, but then we have this expansion port. And that's where the magic happens when we put the Atomos Connect module on the back. So that just literally clips on there. And you can see then as we turn around, we have a completely integrated product. And then we're turning the Ninja into a fully connected product. And then all we've then got to do is pop in our SSD and get it the right way around. Here we go. And then pop a battery on the back. And then we're good to go. So that's really, you know, the magic of adding this accessory onto the back for a camera to cloud connected workflow. So yeah, so really what I wanted to talk through, I guess the thing that really underpins some of these new features is that we've developed and unlocked Wi-Fi 6E for the best of breed wireless connectivity for a cloud workflow. So obviously connectivity is everything. We've spoken about that already. And Wi-Fi 6 is the best. Wi-Fi 6E is the best. And actually to get Wi-Fi 6E on any portable device at this price point and this type of product is unheard of. So with the foundations of rock solid Wi-Fi and Ethernet, plus the added robust air glue wireless sync, with all of those things, you really have the ingredients for a solid cloud workflow. So just to sort of go through the 3 key features here that we can see on this slide. These have all been requested from our customers, again, learnt over the last year, and we've rolled these out for OS 11 and particularly for the Ninja Ultra. So if we look at the first one, matching file names with the camera. So this is such a good feature that we're asked to support from day one. And up until now, most of you are probably aware that we've been creating both the master and the proxy file using Atomos on the Atomos device itself. And the advantage of that is that we're able to make sure that the file names and the timecode always matched. And then the whole process of relinking the media later in post is simple and quick. But quite often the user would rather record the master file in the camera and just use the Atomos device for recording the proxy. And for this to work seamlessly, we need to make sure that we can pick up over SDI the record trigger and have the time code and the file names matching. So we've been beavering away behind the scenes. We've been working with Arri, Canon, Red, and I can just announce today, hot off the press, Sony as well. So with all of these cameras, we have a whole bunch of popular SDI cameras all supported now for this type of workflow. And this workflow really has two benefits. One, the user has the choice of where to record their primary file. And two, the user can actually record a higher quality proxy file than they could have done before. And really this feature also then links quite nicely into the next feature of being able to upload a 4K H.265 file to camera to cloud. So this is the first time we've unlocked this option. And having this option allows a high quality in-camera file maybe to be recorded along with a high quality 4K H.265 proxy. So you really do get the best of both worlds. And also it opens up the option of just being able to record one high quality 4K file and send this to camera to cloud instead. So this really serves the purpose that I spoke about earlier, where the user only wants or needs to have a single master file sent to the cloud, and they don't need to relink to anything else. So then the third feature for the Ultra and the OS 11 is a brand new codec option to record in both ProRes RAW and proxy. Again, requested feature right from the beginning. People really like the idea and want to have a RAW and proxy workflow, and to have those recorded together is super powerful. And also, not only that, we've also turned up the wick on our new products with performance, and we can now record at up to 4K 60 ProRes RAW and proxy, rather than capped at 4K 30 ProRes DNX that we'd previously been doing. So the 60 frames actually has been sort of one of those, the higher frame rate has been asked for a lot from content producers, sort of shooting sports and fast action. So they'll be really pleased with this update. So, so with all of those new features and the new products, hopefully you agree, Shawn, that we've got a couple of exciting new products here and a bunch of pretty cool new features that lean themselves to camera to cloud.
Absolutely. Thank you for going over all that. And yeah, throw those questions in the chat because we are getting ready and geared up for some Q&A time. But Paul, thank you so much for going over this new product. Again,
Okay.
I love the color. I love the look and all the new features. I think are going to just continue to open up the doors for so many different filmmakers and videographers out there to make this all kind of work easier and faster for them. But I do want to jump into Q&A. So I'm going to bring out our entire panel. So Victor, Dru, and Graham, we're going to bring all you out. And we've got some questions that are queued up. So I want to just kind of go down the list because there's some good ones in here. So the first one I want to talk about, and we talked a little bit about connectivity, and there's a few of them in here, so I want to drop this in there. But is there a recommended internet bandwidth for this process? So instead of me saying what we would recommend, what have you all seen and experienced? What upload speeds do you feel work best when you're kind of on the go?
I don't know if I want to get into speeds necessarily. Think of it more like the type of internet access point you're using, right? I mean, you can use anything from tethering off of your mobile device to a mobile hotspot to a bonded internet option to a satellite option to in-studio Wi-Fi. And I think that is a better starting place because as long as you have some sort of bandwidth, for me, the files eventually get there faster or slower, depending on if I'm in the desert or the middle of a major city.
Any others? Any other answers to that one?
I guess from my point of view, this sort of going back to some of the case studies that we've had, you also don't really need to worry about switching locations because you might have internet in one location and you don't have it in another location. But I think when we were doing the Sundance Festival earlier in the year, and you've got a situation where maybe in one particular location there's no internet or very little internet, and you find that the clips are actually going up in the vehicle and the car on the way to the next location. So you don't really need to worry about it. Maybe as Graham said, you don't really need to worry about it in terms of actual speed because the clips will go up no matter what. Even if you have to record down in a cave and the clips go up when you're back at the hotel or back in the office.
Paul, that's a really good point to jump in there. I experienced that 2 days ago. Had to hike to a waterfall to film a scene. Could not obviously get any internet out there. and we were worried about, where the clips. We weren't worried about where the clips were going to go, but we were kind of just wondering when they would pop up. When we got right back to the cabin on set, they were there.
Cool.
All right.
Which maybe we should really quick touch on. Sorry, Shawn, but the UI, the instant feedback, is actually really important on the Ninja, because the worst thing you can have is, oh, are my files uploading? And have that be sort of a question. But in the upper left of the Ninja, there's a little queue that forms. So it's very clear sort of which files are headed up there and which are, still remaining in the queue. So it gives you a little bit of peace of mind knowing that it's in process.
No worries. I do want to jump. We have a couple questions here, and I want to try and get as many in as possible. This one's from Drake. And there's another question that's similar to this, so this may be able to answer both. But is it possible to still dual record proxies locally to the Ninja if you lose internet connection? And I think this is a big one because, a lot of folks wonder, if there's no internet connection, if you lose a signal, what happens to those files? And do you have a redundancy recording available to you?
Yeah, totally. I mean, that's that's the sort of almost the triple redundancy aspect of it, really, because you are recording when we're in our dual codec mode, which obviously people have been using, for the last year or so. You're recording both of those files; they're both on the SSD, and it's actually almost like a triple redundancy file that's actually going up into the cloud. So yeah, absolutely. If you were to lose internet, it really doesn't matter.
And let's throw up this one as well. I think this is a good one. This might be good for the group. But what's the best practice for interpreting, tracing back from raw and log original source, so frame accurate decisions and color grading can be done? Tracing back the raw and log file. So it sounds like they're trying to link back what's the best practice for interpreting and tracing back raw and a log source? So it sounds like they're trying to match their raw file with a source here. Are you guys? Maybe I read this really quickly.
Like a color profile versus a raw file? Is that
That's what it sounds like.
Yeah.
But basically, how is your color grading workflow done? What are some steps that you guys do to kind of include color in this process?
Right. I can go first. For us, I'm still refining our workflow in terms of reconnecting the proxies to the main files. But since we have to rename the Sony files to the Atomos Ninja files, we go through kind of like a batch renaming process to match every single thing. And that's the only step that we go through. And then everything else on our NLE will be connected after that. It's still a step up ahead. That's why I'm super excited for the H.265 4K directly from the Ninja 5 to the NLEs, because that's going to skip that step. So I don't know if you guys have any other workflows in terms of linking your master files, but with my Sony workflow, that's how I do it.
The coloring process for us is very last step. And to be completely honest, maybe I'm not the best to answer this question, because that is not something at that moment in time that we actually worry about. We know what our color profiles look like. We have LUTs that we can program onto the Ninja or the Shogun. So there's those options there. So I don't really think too much about that, to be honest, until the editor is done with his edit, and then we start looking at color. We always have our ideas of what we want it to look like, and that's done in pre-production. But as far as doing tests and on the spot from the editor, I try to just match my LUTs as best as possible.
Well, unfortunately, everyone, we have reached the end of this session, but keep those questions coming in. Graham, Dru, and Victor are still on the sidelines, and we also have some Atomos folks, as well as our team, answering questions on the side. So if they weren't answered live, I do apologize. We did run out of time, but I do want to thank everyone for joining us today, including you all in the audience, because I know this is early for some of you, and some of you are all the way across the world. So we really, really appreciate you jumping on. Now, I do like to take a moment, and if you want to learn more about Frame.io or expand on the existing plan that you have, please take advantage of scanning this QR code and contact our sales team. They can answer any questions that you may have or inquire about expanding on a current plan that you may have already happening and you want to expand on that. Another thing I always love to do is get a survey. I want to know what you all think, and we want your feedback. And also, if you've got suggestions for other content you want to see, please scan this QR code and tell us what you think. And we'd love to hear your feedback on all things Frame.io Live. And as always, please check back to our Frame.io Live page by visiting frame.io/live. We have some new recordings of some recent color sessions that we did with our in-house colorist, Ray. We also have some sessions scheduled each week that go over the basics of Frame.io and some of our integrations. So if you want to learn more about those, definitely check out Frame.io Live to do that. So once again, I want to say thank you to everyone. Thank you to all of our guests for joining us today. And we really, really had a great time having you all here. So once again, say thank you, everyone. We'll say goodbye. Whoop, whoop, whoop. And
thanks, everybody. Thanks, Shawn.
Cheers. Thanks.
Thank you all. And thank you for joining Frame.io Live. We'll see you all later.
Thank you all.